What is going on, everybody, and welcome to my review for Fear Street Prom Queen. This is a new Netflix original movie that is an adaptation of a book from the Fear Street series that came out back in the 90s, written by author R.L. Stine. Many of you will know him as the author who wrote all of the Goosebumps books, and the Fear Street series shares a lot of similar characteristics to the Goosebumps books. It was just targeted more towards a bit of an older crowd, whereas the Goosebumps books are more targeted towards, elementary school, early middle school. The Fear Street books were meant to appeal more to like an 8th grade, early high school age range. I actually remember reading one of them when I was 13 and it mentioned something about sex, and I was like, man, I don't know if I'm allowed to be reading this. But anyways, Netflix has now turned this into a little movie franchise, and it actually kicked off with a trilogy of films back in 2021 that I actually quite enjoyed. Each film was released episodically over the course of a 3-week period, much like a TV show would be, and I thought that was an interesting strategy on the part of Netflix. And as a supernatural slasher, I thought there were some really cool ideas in there, and I was impressed how they were able to execute all of those ideas over the course of 3 movies and giving them each their own vibe and style without harming the overall cohesion of the trilogy. But even having enjoyed those films, it didn't really give me any cause to have any real expectations for Fear Street Prom Queen, because so much of what made that trilogy so interesting is strictly unique to them and the structure in which they were created and released. None of that was going to be here in Prom Queen. This is a singular story, and so if you take away the name, a Netflix original high school slasher set in the 80s on prom night feels very been there, done that, and nothing I was seeing in terms of buzz or promotion was doing anything to really move the needle for me. As I just mentioned, this movie takes place on prom night, and the basic premise here is you have a set of girls competing against one another for the coveted title of Prom Queen, and as the night progresses, students start to disappear at the hands of a mysterious mass killer. Now, if that premise sounds boring, lazy, generic, well, there's a simple explanation for that. Because it is. I'm just gonna go ahead and tell you guys right now, I did not like this movie. At all. This is easily going to be my most negative review I have given for a film on this channel thus far, and that's a real shame because I don't even ask a lot from slashers because I'm typically blinded by my love for them, and that kind of makes me easy to please. But even with a runtime of only an hour and a half, this movie was quite the endurance test for me. But before we get into the who's, what's, and whys, I'd like to ask that while you are here, go ahead and consider giving the video a like and subscribing to the channel for more movie reviews. I would greatly appreciate it. Make sure to get down in the comments below and tell me all of your thoughts on these Fear Street films. I would love to read what you guys have to say. Alright, let's do this thing. Starting with the positives, and something I did like about this movie was... No, not that. I got it. White Wedding by Billy Idol is in this movie. I like that song.
No way.
Getting into the real nitty-gritty now, the negatives, and I am not kidding you when I say there is not one single thing that I can think of to compliment this movie on. This is one of the most painfully generic, dime a dozen, rinse, wash, repeat slashers I have seen in a very long time. I didn't think that it could get worse than Screamboat for me this year, but this movie makes that one look like John Carpenter's Halloween. Ever since the release of Stranger Things, the 80s setting and aesthetic has become very prominent in the horror genre, and don't get me wrong, I absolutely love the 80s. A lot of my favorite film and music come from that decade, but I don't think it's a bold statement to say that we are at a point now where it has become very oversaturated, and I think Fear Street Prom Queen is the perfect representation of all the bad that comes alongside that, because in this movie it is simply only used as wallpaper to prey on the love that you have for films from that era, and it's all in an attempt to trick you into thinking you are having as much fun watching this movie as you do those classics. And much like actual cheap wallpaper in real life, the level of effort here is paper thin. Cringe is a very overused word these days. The internet has pretty much beaten it to death, but I cannot think of a more fitting or appropriate word to use to describe the characters and the writing in this movie. I lost count of the number of times I winced in pain while I was watching it, and not once did this happen during a scene or a moment where someone is being brutally murdered. No, just seeing these characters talk and interact with one another was enough to make me have to bust out the barf bag. There is just so much who the fuck talks like that dialogue in this movie, and it's not even done in a funny enough way to where the "it's supposed to be bad and over the top, that's intentional" argument can hold any weight. For example, this is another movie that completely struggles with accurately depicting high school bullying. I don't know why this is such a problem for so many movies, but it has quickly become one of my biggest pet peeves in all of film. I mean, there are multiple moments where the students are ruthlessly bullying our main character over her dead dad in the presence of plenty of adults, and no one does a thing about it. Movies always go 0 to 100 with this shit, and it is so infuriating. And don't get me started on the dance-off scene. Oh, the dance-off scene. Yeah, that moment will be the subject of my nightmares for the coming weeks. I could barely keep my eyes on the screen while it was happening. The killer here is also nothing special. They have an okay but very forgettable look. There's no signature weapon or anything like that, and the kills are nothing to write home about either, and even the ones that are somewhat solid are completely ruined by really cheap and bad looking CGI. I'm not even going to go down that road. If you've seen any of my prior horror videos, you know how I feel about CGI blood and gore. In terms of the reveal of their identity and what their motive is, I figured it out within the first 20 minutes of the movie due to some very unsubtle and transparent acting, and nothing dealing with all this stuff unfolds in a particularly satisfying way, and the killer could have been a saving grace for this movie. There are a lot of slashers that aren't necessarily good, but they have an interesting killer or one that pulls off a lot of creative kills, and it can kind of save the movie, but there's nothing you get here on the killer side of things that redeem or allow you to look past the abundance of flaws that this movie has. Lastly, I didn't find the final girl here to be all that interesting or compelling. Are you starting to notice a theme here? She starts off as a likable enough underdog, but she very quickly becomes just as annoying as any other character in this movie. Throughout the whole middle of the film, she's kind of just a dick, and because I wasn't that invested in her to begin with, I didn't care to understand the reasoning behind the sudden shifts in her personality. Good slashers either need to have an interesting killer or a compelling final girl. The best ones typically have both, but Fear Street Prom Queen doesn't come anywhere close to having either one of those things. So needless to say, I hated this movie, and some of you who have seen it may think that I'm being too dramatic or too harsh on it, but look, I watch a lot of movies, a lot of them horror movies. It's my favorite genre, specifically slasher movies. And so when something is generic to what I would say an insulting degree, that bothers me so much more and pisses me off more than a movie that's just bad because it tried some things that just didn't come together. I respect that so much more than the stale offering that we got with Fear Street Prom Queen. The only people I could possibly imagine recommending this movie to are no older than the age of 13. Everyone else, I strongly encourage you to stay away and avoid this movie at all costs. It is a utter waste of time, nothing burger of a slasher movie, and your time would be much better spent just rewatching the classics from the era that this movie so thinly tries to replicate. Fear Street Prom Queen broke my rating scale, and I don't mean it burst through the ceiling of a 5 out of 5. No, it burrowed into the ground beneath a 0. I wish I could erase this movie from my memory. My senior prom in real life was almost taken out by a tornado, and I would rather re-experience that than to ever watch this movie again, because at least during that moment, I felt other emotions other than rage. Well, guys, that's all I've got. For my own health, I can't talk about this movie any longer, but make sure to get down in the comments below and tell me what you thought about Fear Street Prom Queen. Don't forget to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel as well for more movie reviews, and I will see you all in the next one. I'm gonna go nurse a migraine now.